Hello, everyone. We're back. This will drop after Thanksgiving, but we're still in the Thanksgiving, the pre-Advent season, at least for a few days, 2 days, something like that. Um, we're back. We're joined by Bulge, and we're talking about arguably the greatest Thanksgiving movie. There's not that many of them out there. I would say it's probably this one, which is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and then the other one, which is Best in Show. Both very good movies, both comedies,
Hmm.
both very different. I did watch Best in Show over Thanksgiving, as is tradition. And it is a great film. It's nowhere near as deep as Planes, Trains. And Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is one of the better Hollywood movies out there. So we're talking about that today. Joined by Bulge, direct from Brazil,
Yes.
and has just completed several Herculean trials, it sounds like. So
Yes, very much so. This is always an interesting movie to watch because we have analogs for Christmas. We have Easter here because we are nominally at least a Christian country. We have New Year's. So we all get those types of like holidays. But Thanksgiving is a very American holiday.
it
Oh, we
is.
do have a name for it, which is the same name as what you do after Mass when you receive the Eucharist, actually, Ação de Graças, which literally means, translating it word for word, the action of giving thanks.
Yeah.
So we just say Day of Ação de Graças, Day of Giving Thanks, which we call your holiday over there. And I have American cousins, so I've always been aware that it's some kind of early settler Indian thing, Native American, I suppose, nowadays.
Ish. It's
Ish,
like
yeah.
4 or 5 different things coming together. And
Okay.
like all holidays, it's not just
Yes.
one thing. That's
Yeah.
me speaking as a a
Yes, yes,
folklorist.
very
Yeah,
true.
there's always
Easter is not
people
just the
love.
resurrection of Christ, or
Yeah,
rather, the resurrection of Christ is not literally just him walking out of a tomb. It's a
right.
lot more things than that.
Right. And people on Twitter love to go, well, actually it's a Christianite pagan holiday. I'm like, that isn't a dig. That's just a
Yeah,
description,
thank
and
you
we all
for
agree with you. Yeah.
thank you
Yeah,
for
it's
agreeing with
thank you
me,
for
Mr.
agreeing with what we
Smartass.
were saying. Yeah, so yeah, no, I actually, as I've gotten older, I actually come to like Thanksgiving more. I think maybe that just comes with age. Growing up, it was always like an introduction to Christmas season. Um,
Hmm.
and
I
my
can see
birthday
why.
my birthday is actually next week. So because and this year Thanksgiving falls quite late, fell quite late because of the movable feast, quote unquote, aspect of it. A
Hmm.
secular movable feast. And
Hmm.
uh so actually, yeah, like it this year is weirdly late. I do recall though, as a child, it was like a time to get together with family, but it was also like, and then Christmas comes, like, and so and then my birthday, and then Christmas. So, but as I get older, I realize I think maybe you just become less, hopefully less of a degen, and hopefully more grateful, and hopefully you have more things to be grateful for. So, and I know I said this on Twitter, whenever this drops yesterday. I'm grateful for you as well, there, Mr.
Yes.
Bulge. And so, even though your papist country doesn't celebrate this holiday, I can still be thankful for
I will
you.
say that even if it was all Protestants, I'm not completely sure we would celebrate it.
Yeah, the hilarity of it all is that the Puritans would have absolutely fucking hated what the holiday is now, which I think is great because I'm
Yes.
a Puritan disrespecter. So, yeah,
Uh-huh. Many
yeah,
are. Many of the best people are.
yeah, many such cases.
Uh-huh.
So, anyhow, this movie, I confess, it's only been in the past maybe 4 years that I've really started enjoying this movie, particularly as a Thanksgiving film, which is very weird because so
Which you're
John
gonna
Hughes,
need to walk me through, by the way, because I don't know. Because like I
this
understand
is
the word Thanksgiving and the term, but you need to walk me through what it means
well,
for an American growing up nowadays.
yeah,
Thanksgiving,
yeah. So I think,
followed by Christmas, which is at
yeah.
least to me a superficially very similar holiday, but there aren't gifts.
Well, yeah, I wasn't, but see, I was raised culturally, whatever. I mean, that kind of weird cultural Christianity that America gets. So
Hmm.
like,
Yes.
I didn't ever understand. And when we do, hopefully in a few weeks, we're going to do an episode
Yes.
on Nightmare Before Christmas, which we'll really
Yes.
get. I
Yes.
never really understood what Christmas was. I knew I liked it, and I knew that
Hmm.
Thanksgiving was a lead into it, but like it was just, they felt like moments to get together with family, which again, is actually part of the holidays too.
Yes.
That's actually because it's always more than one thing. That's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a time to get okay, yeah, but fine. Yes, that's part
Yeah,
of it. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I heard it all
yeah,
before.
yeah. So it's a John Hughes film
Mm-hmm.
who was taken from us far too young. The
Mm-hmm.
great American director John Hughes, Chicago original. We love and miss. In my family, we put a sign out in front of our yard that says, "In this house, we respect John Hughes." Um, in this house, we light 16 candles. Anyhow, um, in this house, we go on Christmas vacations. Anyhow, growing up, so there was a tradition growing up that was a John Hughes tradition. It just wasn't this movie. So growing up, my birthday is early December, and so we would get very early December. I won't say which day, and we
Mm-hmm.
would get our Christmas tree on my birthday. And so then we would watch Christmas Vacation, which I hope you've seen.
I have seen it, I think, 3 times in my life,
Okay,
but it's
yeah, yeah.
awesome.
And we
I
would
have seen
watch
some
that.
other vacation movies like 5 or 6 times. I
Yeah,
love the vacation movies.
yeah. Go for me. It goes what? Like, yeah, yeah. Christmas is number. The Christmas Vacation is number one for me.
I think it's number one
It's just
nowadays. For
yeah,
me as a kid, it wasn't, but that's just because I saw the other ones first.
yeah. Okay,
Nowadays, Christmas
yeah.
is, I can see that it's a better movie.
It's a very good film. So we would watch Christmas Vacation while we were setting up the tree. So that was like I didn't know it as a kid because again you're a kid. This is before the internet, or at least before the what we now know as the internet. You
Hmm.
can't just look shit up. And I didn't even think to look in the back of the video, which was because I was a kid. But this so that was a John Hughes film that was like a big part of my childhood. But so it's only been in like my more young adult and adult years that I've really like expanded outwards. I'm like, I need to watch more of his filmography
Work,
because
yeah.
I really enjoy it. I love, I mean, Bueller, I mean, it's just like
This is a
Hughes
very
movies are.
vacation. He has a very distinct style. You can kind of tell.
He also, I'm a a fan of everything 80s, even though I was
Hmm.
I was born just at the very end of the decade. I mean, I love 80s music. I love 80s films. And Hughes, I think this would maybe be probably a topic for another day, but Hughes embodies a lot of the aspirations and hope of like a hopeful America, not a perfect America, but a hopeful America that at least was kind of in the cultural sphere or environment during the 80s. And I think it's kind of, I mean, I think it's also pretty symbolic that like he dies and then it's like right and like then can't make any more movies and it's like America does start this real downward spiral
Hmm.
thing. And I can't help but think that I'm not saying it's causal, but I'm saying it's emblematic of something like the people
Yeah.
who could make movies like
Hmm.
this are kind of just not with us anymore, which is
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like this, the generation is not with us anymore, and not in the same
Yeah,
way.
the people who could have stopped World War II died in World War One type of
Exactly,
deal.
something like that. Yeah, yeah. Right. People of goodwill and like of
Hmm.
hope and of not and of like not taking themselves too seriously. Which when I think of John Hughes movies, I know I'm gushing here, everyone, but I mean, I think most people who would you're if you don't like John Hughes movies, I don't know what to do for you, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I
You
think
don't
it
have a
says
sense of
something
humor.
about you as a person. Like you don't have to love them, but like come on, these are fun films. Anyhow, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles has become now, I've like sort of retroactively made it part of like the holiday tradition for my family. So we always watch it before we watch Christmas Vacation now. So that's how we've
Hmm.
corrected that mistake. It's a really good movie. It came out 2 years before Christmas Vacation, and I think it's been nice to see at least on Twitter since I've been on Twitter, which hasn't been that long, but in the few years I've been on Twitter, it's actually seemed like this has a pretty strong Twitter following. Every year, in and around Thanksgiving, I see tweets about
Yep.
planes, trains, and automobiles, and how it's a really good film, and how not just as a movie, and not even just as a John Hughes movie, but also that's it's actually a pretty deep film. One of the things too that I really like about John Hughes is I mean, like not subtly Christian. Despite the profanity and the hilarity of his films, like there's like overt Christian parts to many of his films.
Hmm.
And so I mean, I haven't done a deep dive into his religious background, but it's like, I mean, he's definitely Christ haunted, right? In that like
Hmm.
sense of like there's something about particularly the movies in and around Christmas time or the holiday movies that he did. have there's something deeper there. So anyhow, we'll talk about that's what we're doing today. We're gonna just gush about the film, talk about why
Mm-hmm.
it's funny. I'm gonna give a little shout out if I can, just so I don't forget.
Please.
So there's a guy on Twitter, and I don't know how my esteemed Roman colleague will feel about this Twitter handle, but I like it. At No Jesuit Tricks, Shelby Foot Appreciator. Everyone should check him out. I'll link the tweet that I'm going to read here in the description. If you want cool Anglican historical tidbits and nice Southern American, not like South American, but Southern United States American
Mm-hmm.
cooking tips and all of this stuff, I do recommend a follow. And if you're watching, good sir, hello. So if I can just read this, if that's okay.
Please, please.
Yeah.
His nonfiction and fiction prose is great. So please read whatever you can of
Yeah, I
him.
believe that he has a Substack as well. I think
Yeah,
Substack.
he
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
He does. It's
He,
really good.
he did
Highly
a post.
recommend anyone
He
who's
did a
interested.
Substack recently too about why the King James version is amazing, and
It is
I,
amazing.
I'm
It should be obvious.
it's
I was my school growing up, my middle and high school, most of our classes were in English, and I was
yeah,
outraged when I found out. We had Bibles, like at two or three different versions, and we were on an Anglican there was an Anglican church in the school. It wasn't part of a school, we just rented the land from the Anglican church. And we didn't, and neither the Anglican church nor the school had a KJV. And I was an atheist at the time. I was actually outraged out of
yeah.
love for the English language. I
We
was like,
will
no, no, no. I was like
let's do this.
lobbying the English department to buy a
In
KJV samples
Bulge,
for
if you would be
everyone.
so kind, because I would love your take on this, because
Please.
you're an incredibly fluent yet non-native speaker of English, which
Mm-hmm.
means you appreciate it more than I do. Because I know what it is to learn a language. In the new
Mm-hmm.
year, let's do an episode all about why we love the KJV. Okay, let's put it in
Please.
that. Yes,
I
because
need to reread a lot of it because I've
it's
been
so good.
rereading
Yeah.
a lot of RSV and NIV whenever I look up a title and then NKJV, which I need to appreciate the differences between the KJV and the
Yeah.
NKJV.
I am a more ESV for modern English, but I still love the
ESV,
KJV.
I still look at ESV sometimes, at least
Yeah.
online when I'm on my
Yeah.
computer or my phone.
Yeah. All right, so here's the tweet. Okay, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, the greatest of all Thanksgiving films, is unironically an allegory of redemptive friendship and an unintended allusion to the Gospel's Simon of Cyrene. Simon, a serious man traveling on unrelated business, was seemingly plucked at random from the crowd to bear the burden of a man he found revolting. But after
Hmm.
having struggled beneath the weight of that man's cross, he came to care deeply for him. I have always imagined the conversation Simon must have had with his wife as he returned home reeking of sweat and stained with blood. What happened to you? She must have asked. Jerusalem was in an uproar. I was just trying to get home when a Roman soldier plucked me from the teeming mass and told me I was to carry the cross of a prisoner on his way to die. How dreadful! It truly was. He had been beaten to the point where he was barely recognizable as human. So is that his blood all over you? Yes. On the way to the hill, I just knew that there would be some confusion, that I would be taken as a criminal and executed. But thankfully, his death was all they wanted. He died, and I was able to walk away a free man. It was surreal. At once, Simon's sons bounded into the room and, seeing the sorry state their dad was in, asked the obvious question, "Daddy, what happened to you?" "Boys," said he, "I met a man today, capital M, and that man was God, and my life will never be quite the same again." Those two boys, Alexander and Rufus, CF Romans 16:13, went on to become missionaries, carrying that same cross to a world in need. Uh, and so then there's a fun picture of yeah, Neil and gosh,
Dell.
Neil and Dell. Thank you. Yes. Checking their
Del
watch.
Griffin and Neil. I forget Neil's last name, but it's Neil and Del Griffin,
Neil.
I
Yeah,
believe.
so this is my problem is I always just Neil Page, Del Griffith. Del
Yeah,
Griffith, Neil Page. Yeah.
Griffith.
Yeah, Griffith. Yeah. Checking their watches as they're sitting on the trunks out after they've been robbed. It's a petty thief. He left our plastic. He only took the cash. Yeah. Um, so so thanks again to Shelby Foot Appreciator for this post because I kind of got, as you tend to do
Hmm.
with Hughes films, that there's something deeper happening there. There's an
Yeah,
undercurrent that kind of peaks above the water, then goes back down under the water, and
yeah.
it's constantly there. This is a really I never really quite got this though until I read this tweet. So this is why I love Twitter. Many stupid people, but many smart people too, making good posts. Um, there is something kind of um I, I mean, maybe sacramental is probably the wrong word, but it's there's something I think there's maybe something Christian about carrying other people's burdens, whether that's carrying the cross of Christ for a cross temporarily and then being not having to go all the way, like Simon of Cyrene, or whether it's trying to get your newly found and strange friend um, wherever he needs to go. There's something, I mean, bearing burdens, putting up with people, putting up with yourself. I mean, these are all kind of, I think it's not this it's an incredibly Christian kind of framing that the story has. And we're back again after Brazilian internet issues or Brazilian electrical grid issues, probably is a better way of saying it. That's all right. As Bulge just said, the Brazilification is coming for us all here in the States too, so we cannot judge. So yeah, did you yeah, so this it's a great tweet. It's a great imagining of like, what Simon's of Cyrene's
Hmm.
experience would be like coming home. Um I think there's something I think as I was saying just now, I'll edit this together, it'll make it sound better.
Yes,
Or
please,
maybe not.
please.
Maybe I'll just do what Bird does and then just
Yeah,
squeeze everything
yeah, yeah,
together.
screw it.
Just screw it. I'm just gonna squish everything together. Um, People come here for content, not quality, as I like to say.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. There's something very Christian about bearing burdens. And obviously Simon of Cyrene is like bearing the ultimate burden
Especially burdens you didn't
temporarily.
ask for.
Yeah,
He
well,
never
unasked for
asked to meet
burdens.
Dell.
Unasked for burdens. And this is why I mean, I think of other when I think of like the Christian themes in some of Hughes's movies, I never thought of this one explicitly, but this tweet really changed the way I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, because like Neil is this Dell is foisted or foists himself kind of
Hmm.
uh, upon upon Neil. And then Neil is like stuck. That's how Neil views it, right? He's like, I'm stuck with this guy. And I mean,
Hmm.
and Dell is also Neil is stuck with Dell because of just all the horrible, logistical breakdown. Speaking of Brazilification, like everything that goes,
Yeah, yeah.
that goes wrong, what is it? The
Murphy's Law, everything that can go wrong will go
yeah.
wrong, which
I
is a
also think
great tip for comedy of errors type situations.
Comedy of errors. Yeah,
Very good.
I also think of what's the I'm gonna butcher the quote, but like the maintenance of basic systems is like the cornerstone of civilization, and like
Yes.
like if just a couple things get out of whack in any sort of human system, just well, this movie ensues, right? Where there's just like you're not where you need to be. Now you're getting stolen from. Now there's breakdowns, there's car fires, there's distracted driving. There's all manner of things that can go wrong. Um, but bearing burdens, right? Like bearing and like quite rightly as you say, Bulge, bearing unasked for burdens. It's not the burden you wanted, it's the burden you kind of got. Kind of
Hmm.
I mean, that's part of life. Some people
Yes.
obviously experience that more than others. I am not a Calvinist, so I don't look at burdens people bear and think that this is some sort of sign as a in terms of whether they are elect or not. I think of people bearing burdens as this is just what it is, as they would
Hmm.
say probably in Long Island, it's what it is. And some people have more of them, some people have less of them. But I guess this just shows you I'm getting older. I mean, I am turning 1 year older next week. I think burdens kind of make the man in a way, which sounds really trite
Yes.
and like kind of and like cliche, but it is true. Like, and not just the burdens themselves, but it's like the way you handle them.
Hmm.
But also as I get older, it's the people you let help you with them also make you
Hmm.
a better person. And that's hard for me. I have a very hard time with letting people help me. I really enjoy helping other people. I know everyone says that, but I actually genuinely enjoy helping people. And people who know me would say that, I think.
No, it's one of the best feelings to
I really
dude,
like
I
helping people.
like when I
Yeah.
watch this movie with family, like the best part of the movie is looking at other people and watching them smile and laugh. It's better
Yeah.
than the movie itself. Like
Yes.
whenever I watch a comedy with family or other people or when I was dating, that's the best part. It's like, oh, they're enjoying themselves. And like then I am enjoying myself. Because if they're not, like the movie's not fun.
Yeah.
Uh, it's like so it's a very it's it's a very epic instinctive thing for a lot of people to just be
Yeah.
like, you don't need to worry about it. Let me worry about you.
Right.
I'm fine if you're fine.
I think at least speaking personally, it's very difficult for me to I'll confess everything because you're a Roman. I yeah. Bless me, Bulge.
Uh-huh.
For,
Bathroom fit is up
yeah.
to him.
Um, no, but like I have a hard time letting people help me because I think
Hmm.
it's like and it's not because I don't want to be helped. I do like want to be helped, and I do like getting assistance. It's not that I necessarily want to suffer or at least suffer needlessly or suffer for nothing. Um, I think it's that like I don't like letting people see that I am really screwed up, like as everyone is,
Yeah,
and so
yeah, yeah.
and so I don't like being vulnerable. It's like the
No, I
vulnerability. I
get that.
know,
Yeah.
and that's not unique to me. I get that that's most people, but
Uh-huh.
I think this movie, in some ways, it's not just about bearing burdens. It's about bearing burdens that you didn't want and you never asked for. But also, it's kind of a movie about maybe divine providence or hands of fate, whatever you want to call it, steering
Yes.
people back into because they keep trying to break and they keep getting steered back together on their journey. And then also I think it's a movie about the importance of being truly vulnerable. Um,
Yes. To
not
both
with
Neil
every
and Dell, by the way,
yeah,
which
both
is
of them.
important here.
Yeah. Because I think so, and maybe if we could we'll just jump from that if that works from you,
Yeah.
for you.
Please.
Dell I think he's the more put together, quote unquote. He he tries really hard to project a version of himself that's very put together. I mean, he works in
Yes.
advertising. Was it for cosmetics? Cosmetic
No,
advertising.
Dell or Neil?
Sorry, Neil.
Neil works in cosmetics, yeah, in a big
Cosmetic
company.
advertising.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
The
he tries
movie
really
starts with him trying to
yeah.
get out from a 3 hour or 4 hour meeting, or however long it was, to
Yeah.
then like, by the way, next week we need to reconvene and assess this again. And it's just a silent scene, just a guy looking up at a
Yeah.
poster that the marketing team has put together. It's a great moment where he picks it up, just looks at it for like I think 20 seconds straight. Neil is
Yeah.
mouthing like, "I have a blade to
Yeah.
catch," and
Yeah.
then sighs. Then the camera pans back to the CEO, whoever it is. Sighs, puts it back down, considers it for like another 10 seconds, and then picks it up again, and then
Yeah.
spins around him, and the scene
It's
cuts to like
it's
4 hours
classic.
later.
It's classic John Hughes. This is John
Yeah.
Hughes. The awkward silences. Yeah, he was king of being able to do that. Like comedic awkward silences. Yes, John Hughes. Yeah, like, and I was funny when I was watching it this year. I was like, this would so just be a Zoom call now. You're like, this is only in the 80s would you be even doing this crazy trip that quickly, like, right? Because you'd probably just be like, it's so. I think it also kind of shows you. I mean, just to
Yeah,
give,
wait, where is he going from? Because
he's
we need
going
to
from
kind of establish from
New
New
York
York.
City, back to
Yeah.
Chicago.
Okay. And he's
That's
like, yeah, and he's like telling his wife he'll be home by like 9 or
yeah, and I'm
whatever it
like,
is. And it's like 6. I'm like, dude, like really?
well, there's an
I
hour
was
time
surprised.
difference. There's an hour
Yeah,
time
yeah,
difference
that's
that works in
true.
your favor, but you like everything would have to go like the most
Perfectly well.
perfect intersection of things. And this is also before the internet. So it's not
Which
like you
indicates, by the way, that his life probably does go like that generally. Even if he
yeah,
isn't there for his kids, at least his professional life, he's a very scheduled person.
yeah,
He's clearly out of his element. The first sign of trouble, he is
right.
kind of out of his element immediately.
Whereas
It was a very
Dell
good
is a
character
very
building.
chaotic person. So,
Yes.
yeah, so I think of, I think if you think of like
Lawful good and chaotic good
yeah, I was just
type
gonna say
characters. Yeah.
I would actually no, I was gonna say for character alignments, Dell is chaotic good, and I do think that Neil is lawful neutral.
That's fair. Yeah, at least at the beginning. I
In the
think he's lawful
beginning,
good at the end.
yeah,
By the
he's
end,
lawful
he's
good at the
lawful
end, but
good.
he's lawful neutral in the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's because there's a lot of, I mean, there's this attempt I mean, throughout the horrific journey, they both, I mean, I think Dell attempts it just to placate Neil, but Neil really cares. I actually, in this scenario, I will say I am not Del. I am actually more as chaotic
Yeah.
as a person I am. I'm actually more Neil in terms of my heart. I am more of
Yes, I am
I'm a
also
lawful
more
neutral
of a Neil
person.
man.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I'm not a lawful good person. I'm lawful neutral. I'm working on it. Um,
Yeah. We're all
because
lawful. A
lawful,
lot of us are lawful neutral working on it.
yeah, well, because Neil wants to strike a quote unquote balance in the sense of splitting costs and managing like expectations and like not having one person overly impose on another
Mm-hmm.
person, which I don't think, I mean, that's the lawful side, and I think that's actually good. I think that like that
Yes.
it's not, that's not inherently bad, right? I actually I
Yeah,
tend towards
it's a politeness
it's a
standard at the
politeness,
yeah, really.
and
It's
it
like,
could just
no, I live in a society of in which like 99.9% of people I don't know. I'm gonna try and not be a burden on them and
right,
keep this thing going that we're
right.
having because I can get back to my family without troubles, you know.
Right. And at some point, if everyone was Dell, we would have a real problem. And that doesn't mean Dell's not a good guy. It just means not everyone in society can like mathematically be him
Hmm.
because nothing would work.
And the
Uh,
society would still function with all lawful neutrals, but
it would
it
have
would
no
not
soul.
achieve its end as a
It,
society, which
yeah,
is
it
the
would not.
common good.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah. It would be a bunch of people trying to like balance, we were just talking about this before, balance a spreadsheet or balance
Yeah.
an accountant sheet. And you're like, okay, great. Like we need accountants, but like we also need like priests, and we need, like theologians, and we
Doctors.
need
Yeah.
poets, and we
Uh-huh.
need musicians. We need like all kinds of people doing different things. But Neil definitely he does something that I'm quite guilty of, which is I like have my way of doing things, which maybe in and of itself is not necessarily bad, but then and I'll say I
Hmm.
project it onto other people as, well, if I'm doing this and I do it this way, then you also should do it this way. And you're like, well, that's it's completely unrealistic because, to be honest, Neil isn't quite as put together as he actually pretends to be.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, he works in advertising, so he's like making shit up for a living.
Hmm.
Like you sell, what does he say? We're selling cosmetics, not the cure
Cosmetics,
for
yeah, he sells
cancer.
cosmetics.
Yeah. Yeah, we're
Not
selling
curing
cosmetics, not the
cancer.
cure for cancer. Like it's like, so even he's aware that it's kind of bullshit. Like it's like I work in
Yeah.
and a lot of us work in bullshit, right? That's fine. I
Uh-huh.
don't judge people who work in bullshit. I that's you have people there's
We all gotta hustle.
well, in the words of Elwood, just some bullshit, right? So the Blues Brothers reference there, just bullshit, just be bullshit. You gotta hustle, right? But it can't be the cornerstone of your personality. For Neil, it actually is, and like
Hmm.
he's the fact that he's expecting. You make a good point. He's expecting to be able to get back by 9 p.m. Central Time, which means that he's expecting a level of precision that is incredible,
Insane, yeah.
insane precision. And like I don't know how even in the 80s when things
And
probably
there's a very John Hughes foreshadowing where his
yeah,
unnamed coworker, I think,
yeah,
just
you'll never
while
make the
Neil is
flight.
getting, you'll
Yeah.
never make the flight, and
Yeah, yeah,
just a big smile and then cut to
yeah.
his problems with getting the taxi.
Well, and this too. So this is I think for you as a if I can be so bold
Please.
As a Latin American,
Uh-huh,
um,
Zolatinx, you can say the
yeah,
word.
there's
You have the pass.
yes. Although do the Brazilians count? I don't know because you don't speak Spanish. Um, there is something. This is a thing I always really like about John Hughes movies. Is he's like super not Latino or Latinx or whatever, but he's very almost all of his movies have a magical realist quality to them.
Yeah, yeah.
There's always something that's a little like where everyone things are kind of weird and uncanny, but everyone accepts it as normal, right? Like
Hmm.
it's not a comedy of the
And it's
real.
not so weird that it gets to like a lot of the slapstick sections are fairly realistic until
Yeah,
like after the latter half, but it builds up to that
yeah,
very slowly and carefully.
yeah,
Up until then, up until like I think really the driving part, which is the
yeah.
most
The
hilarious
driving part. Yeah,
part of the
yeah, yeah,
movie.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
all like actually very realistic conundrums and
Right.
very realistic responses. And the response to the driving part is still really realistic. And after it really gets back to like down to earth, like, oh, we're gonna catch a train now. There's
Right.
still a
Well, and
little bit
that
of magic realism when like they get into a truck, into the back of
well,
like a cargo truck, but
if you've read
still,
yeah, and if you've read any Borges or Kafka or people like that,
or
there's
Marquez, yep.
magical realism always kind of it flirts with the magical, but it's still kind of grounded. It's not like you're not fully going into Narnia. It's like, but there's this
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
of like there's something there. So and the like the literal portent that the his coworker gives as the doors are shutting, which is
Hmm.
all just incredibly like, I mean, I could talk forever about like this the symbolism of closing doors and portent
Yep,
and a
yep.
border between worlds, and I mean it's just yeah, it's all there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's yeah, it's yeah.
Another topic for another day.
Yeah, exactly. I'd have to start talking like this though because of the symbolism, the deep psychological significance of yeah.
Young Nietzsche just
Yeah,
start
yeah,
like
yeah,
saying
yeah, yeah.
I can't do a Kermit voice, at least not
Well,
without appropriate
yeah,
preparation.
yeah. So, but like, yeah, bearing other people's burdens, but then feeling like burdens, I think this is something that resonates with me in the film is that like there's the burdens that you're like, okay, the world is a screwed up place. I will have burdens. I'm ready for this burden. I'm ready for this burden. I want this burden. You're like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
ready for this burden. I want to prove myself with this burden. Sometimes you get those burdens, but oftentimes it's like, here's a completely different burden, or a burden that's kind of reminds you what you thought you were going to be doing, but is so different that you like, there's no way you could possibly prepare for it. For me, I'm somebody who's over planned. I over plan my life,
Yeah, yeah.
and it
I
definitely
like to do
causes
that
me
too.
stress. It's definitely a character flaw. Neil is that kind of a person. Now, I don't have a fancy job like he has, but I work in different time zones and I have to be incredibly
Hmm.
ordered, and
Precise, yeah.
that is good. But I worry the instant something changes, you know, I don't doubt my ability to react to changes. Like, and in the movie, Neil adapts to all of the hilarity. I mean, he has a few breakdowns, to be fair. He almost gets killed a few times, but he actually does react and change and roll with the punches, sometimes
Yeah.
literally. But it's not that he can't adapt and change or adapt and adjust to it. It's that he doesn't want to have to because it would be an
Yeah,
imposition on him.
yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm not going to impose on anyone else, so then they won't impose on me. Yeah, that's not how the world works because it's not
Hmm.
even necessarily that people are imposing on you, although sometimes they do, like when they steal your cash out of your wallet while you're sleeping.
Hmm.
But oftentimes it's just like it's unintentional things that are going like you can't change, like the train has broken down. I mean, well, they didn't, the engineer leaving the station definitely did not want the train to break down. Like nobody wants that to happen. The pilots don't want to have their flight rerouted and fly through a crazy storm. That's probably stressful. Like nobody, many people, it's a thing I always have to remind myself. So I guess I'm doing
Hmm.
that now. So thank you for bearing the burden of hearing me spur out about it. But like it's like not everyone is nefarious. Oftentimes it's just like life is happening and people
Yeah.
are making reactions that I would also probably have. And it's just it compounds out and then it throws you off. And again, it's like most of my wife always has to remind me because she is my better half. It's not like you're like a smart person and you're like you've done all these things in your life. You could totally like you're gonna be fine. I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to have to. And I think
Yeah.
right because I made a plan and
Because it's uncomfortable. Yeah, I don't
it's
want to be
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I want
And
to
it's not an uncomfortable, I'm prepared for him. Like, look, if a Roman soldier got me and nailed me to a cross, I read my Bible. Like, I'm ready for that, you know? But if, like,
are
I
you?
have,
Crucifixion's pretty
yeah,
nasty.
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
for, but if a guy takes his shoes off in the airplane next to you, you have to admit, you're like, maybe I'd prefer, maybe just whip me 30 times or
Oh my
something.
gosh. You're confirming so many stereotypes I have about Catholics. You're like, yeah.
Uh, no, this is just my very, very ordered thing. I'm like, this martyr, hang me or whatever, martyrdom, whatever. And then, like, not mild a discomfort being next to my fellow Christian brother.
Yeah.
Not that.
Well, yeah, right. Not that. It's so much worse. And I think that's, I mean, I guess I'll do the middle of the road Anglican
It's
take
partly
here.
because it's not heroic, by the way. I
It's not
think that's
heroic.
mostly
It's not
it.
heroic,
Because if
right?
you're
It's
being
not heroic.
tortured or whatever, you can be like, no, I'm doing this for Christ. But, like, it's hard to keep Christ in mind when you're just smelling feet
You
or
probably
something
will
like that.
never. you probably will be never remembered for that too, right?
Yeah, no, no, he won't. You can't say it. You can't turn to the guy next to you. By the way, I'm heroically bearing the burden of you
Yeah,
taking your
exactly.
shoes off.
My response would be like, and you're so humble about it. I really appreciate
And I'm
that.
being
Yeah.
really humble about it, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, by the way, yeah. My name is, yeah. Um,
Write it
you
down,
write it
please.
down.
You need to remember this.
Well, and I mean, but this is I'm certain you're more versed in your tradition, so I'm certain in 2 seconds you're going to pull out several examples of this too. But like,
Sure.
'cause I mean, this is it's that idea that like martyrdom in a quote unquote glorious way. Yes, that does happen sometimes, but
Hmm.
I think there's kind of this like daily it's I mean it's the daily dying to self. It's a daily dying to
Hmm.
your plan. It's or like in the sense of being flexible. Like you're just gonna have to be flexible. Like there's just things are gonna not work out exactly as you think. And oftentimes it sucks, but then it also kind of ends up being I mean everyone says this, but it oftentimes it is better. And
Yes.
even if it's not better, it is just what it is. Like this is how life is going. Like you are not in control of things. It's the illusion of control that we all think we have because we are in control of so many things. And so we get used to that. We don't like being thrust out of our comfort zone. But I think that there's something, in some ways, it's almost like, I don't want to say, oh, it's just as heroic as being martyred. It's not. But, it- putting
It's
up
what
with
you
people,
can do.
it's what you
It's
can
also
do.
there is it's in
Well,
some ways I had you said
but
I'm gonna cite my tradition here. Okay, finish your point,
yeah,
then
yeah. But
I
the
will
point
do the
is that like
citation.
the fact that it's small and quote unquote meaningless, which is not true. It is
Yes.
meaningful. There's no such thing as meaningless things. That's a lie.
Yes.
Yeah. Everything matters. It matters to different extent, but everything does matter.
Which is,
Actually,
by the way, a far scarier. It should scare you more than nothing matters, and you should
yes,
respect it.
yes. Yes. And you'll never be remembered for these little actions, even if it's just putting up with somebody. Um, and that
Except by the one person, well, the three
eh,
persons that matter.
yes, but in some ways it's like that you have no choice. You're forced into being selfless in that moment.
Hmm.
And it doesn't and you don't like it. But
Yeah.
it's not the thing you're choosing because it's really not about your choice. Sorry
Yes.
there. Sorry if this offends you there, Bulge. But it's not really
No.
your choice. It's just what's
Yeah.
happening,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
that's what you're dealing with. Like,
Shall I not accept the cup that my father gaveth to me? Said Jesus to
well,
Peter.
like, but oftentimes as mere mortals, we don't have a choice at all. It's just what it's.
Yeah.
Now, maybe we can make decisions about how we deal with it. And I would agree with that. This is again very middle of the road Anglican approach. I would agree with that. But oftentimes it's like this is just how your life is right now. And grieve it if you need to, but it is just what it is. You're gonna have to put up with somebody, or
Hmm.
something. Um,
Which
you
is,
won't
by
be
the way, the
remembered.
only way to be
It's not
selfless.
glorious. It's not glorious, but rejecting glory for 2 seconds, right? Like then
Hmm.
this is if I can bring it out because you're a person who can handle this. This
Hmm.
is this is theology of the cross over theology of glory, right? That's a little bit of Luther
Yes.
there, a little bit of Luther there, but Luther's riffing on earlier Roman Catholic or just Catholic
Earlier
Western Christians.
patristics. We'll
Yeah,
call them
yeah,
church
like
fathers.
yeah, church fathers, yes,
We'll be
but
ecumenical about
we'll be
it.
ecumenical. I owe you
Even
to
the
Augustine.
Baptists can read Augustine.
He's
Yeah.
an Augustinian monk, so like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, yeah, it's like, but it's the theology of the cross. Now, I mean, and it kind of feels funny, like, is your cross Del Griffith? But there's that scene in the movie where he's like, you're just the nastiest but you smoke you
Uh-huh.
slobber and if anyone says how can you put up with it he's like I would rather be like hours of whatever it is
No,
conto
I
yeah
could stand hours and hours of like an auditing seminar, and they
yeah
would, while smiling, and then they would tell me, say to me afterwards, "How could you put up with that?" And I would say, "I could, because I spent time with Dale Griffith."
right which is very funny
And
because
it's
in
a
some
fairly early part of the movie
it's
too.
a
It's like
fairly
in
early
the
part of the
first
movie.
half.
It's very funny, but in some ways, it's and Neil is having a conniption. He's tweaking a
Yeah,
bit
it's a
here,
pivotal moment in the
but
movie because it's
in
one of the scenes that's remembered later by Neil.
right, but because there's no such thing as meaningless things. Actually, all of those things are like he's actually starting to kind of learn what it is to bear someone's burdens. He's just not
Hmm.
liking it, but he's finally being forced to deal with them like in that moment. So, we all have our growing pains, but yeah, like the rejecting glory, like just be like, it's not about whether I'm remembered or any of this stuff. It's like, just do the thing you're supposed to do. And if you don't like it, okay, we don't like a lot of things. This
Hmm.
is that so that's I mean that's kind of I think that and over the course I think Neil starts out being with the visceral reaction that you get there. Then he gets this like just like begrudging acceptance of it. But at the end, I mean like he gets like a like I mean they don't let us know, but like a lifelong friend because there's that
And
fight.
there's a reversal too, where
Yeah,
Neil tells Dell when they're carrying the trunk to Neil's home,
yeah,
and Dell is like, "Oh look, I don't want to be in imposition, whatever." And
yeah.
Neil essentially tells him to get over himself,
Yeah,
and
he's like
like, "I'm
just
helping you now. Shut up."
yeah,
Basically, he says it much more politely. He said, "Just
yeah,
carry the trunk or whatever."
yeah.
But he's basically telling him, "Shut up. I'm helping you now." And now you need to get over yourself on
Well,
this case.
and people remember, right, like at the
In
end of the
this
movie, it's
case.
like, oh, it's so great, and he's home, and then Dell's there meeting his family, and it's this like touching moment. I do think that moment is touching, but I actually think the best part, that the height of the movie is actually the walk up to the house beforehand.
Yes.
Before there's the glory, before there's any of the pomp and circumstance, it's just the guy, they're finally finishing the trip, and they're like that and they're but he's still carrying the burden of the trunk, right? But
Hmm.
now Neil comes
Yeah.
back. He comes back and he doesn't have to. He actually wants to help. He wants
But
to carry
hmm.
a literal and metaphorical, or you're going to hate how I'm using the terms because you're Thomas, a
Yeah, that's fine.
physical and a metaphysical burden for his brother, right? Like he's taking words mean different things in different contexts. Don't
That's
even get me
fine.
started.
That's fine. I'll just repeat
Wittgenstein,
it. It's
I
fine.
will
It's fine. It's
Wittgenstein you and
fine.
out of the window. Yeah, I'm just, it's just
That's fine. I'm just repeating it as a mantra in my
not
head.
literally YouTube. That's not a call to violence. I'm not calling for defenestration. But yeah, it's
Not today, at least.
not today at least. But I actually like that walk up to the house better. I
No,
actually
it's awesome.
I because again, I get that you kind of have to end on the big thing because it's a John Hughes movie. And that's fine.
Hmm.
I like it. But that's like the quiet moment of like grace there at the end where they're both more or less they're oscillating but about between frustration and like peace, but they're like the oscillations have the wavelength is not like it's very minor, right? It's
Hmm.
minor little back. It's not like shouting at each other. It's not
No, no, no.
blowing cars up and stuff like that. It's just
No.
like we're almost here. I love that the
Yeah.
best. Also
No, it's
too,
awesome.
like
It's the best scene
also
of the
too,
movie.
those neighborhoods in Chicago in the snow are quite pretty, I will say. Like
Oh, yeah, they are.
like
I think the
yeah,
real climax of the movie is the two scenes beforehand. It's when Neil gets on the train. He's just said goodbye to Dell,
yeah, yeah,
and then as he said in the scene previous, where they're in the hotel room just shooting the shit after reconciling,
yeah.
after the car accident, the multiple car accidents,
The
really.
multiple car accidents. Yeah. Yeah.
I think three or four,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. It depends how you slice them. Literally,
Yeah,
like
really.
what counts
It
as, yeah.
really
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. Yeah.
The cigarette, the spinning out
Yeah.
of control, the parker getting stuck in in the window, not the window, just the seat adjuster. I don't know
Seat
what it was.
adjuster. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but and he's in the train, and in the scene before, they've just said, they've kind of reconciled their differences. They're sharing a hotel room again, like in the beginning of the movie. Uh, Great scene where Dale, and it doesn't say anything when Neil says, "Hey, at least you got a wonderful woman to share your life with," and he
Yeah.
just raises his glass and makes a toast. Doesn't say anything.
To the women.
Um,
Yeah. To the women or whatever it
the
is. Yeah.
women,
To
yeah,
the
it's
women.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And afterwards, they're at the train station. They're supposed to be heading different ways because Dell doesn't live in the same neighborhood he does.
Yeah.
And Neil, when he's on the train alone, he starts, actually laughing about it because that's what he said in the last scene. One day I'll
Yeah.
remember this and laugh about it. And he
Yeah.
starts like remembering all these like ridiculous things they've been through. And then it switches where he starts remembering Dell's comments and he's like,
Right.
wait, like he hasn't been home in years. He loves his wife. What's going on? And then he like basically leaves, gets the train back, and goes back to that station. and Dell is still, and I think that that decision to like, no, I'm going out of my way,
Yeah,
literally, I am doing a
yeah.
180, to like, no, I need to make sure Dell is okay, and if
Well,
he's
if I
not
may,
okay, he's coming with me.
yeah, and if I may, this is something that so my sometimes co-host and good friend Elliot, we're
Hmm.
talking about in a group chat in our church chat, the other day that how all sacrifice is ultimately a sacrifice of time,
Hmm.
in the end, to get quasi Girardian for 2 seconds, and so like, here Neil is he no longer has to sacrifice his time being traveling alongside Dell. They've reached supposedly like the end point at the L station in Chicago. But then like you said, he chooses to actually sacrifice. He's already like late for dinner, or he's already late for being home. He was supposed to be home
Yeah.
2 days ago. He's willing to sacrifice more time with his family for the which is important to spend time with your
Yes.
family. But he's like, there's a person in front of him or just behind him, he's leaving, he's like, wait, like I need to sacrifice more. And the fact that he
Hmm.
chooses it, and like with great concern, and then he like bursts into the station, whatever you call it, station house thing, because Chicago gets
Yeah.
bloody freaking cold in the winter. It's not, yeah, you'll freeze to death if you wait outside
Uh-huh.
half the time. It's, I don't know how people in the Midwest live. Paz has been on my show. I've been on his show. God bless you. I don't know how you do that. Midwest winters, I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's not
Seems
real.
rough from what I've
It's
heard.
pretty rough, says the Brazilian who's having a sweltering heat. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I fear the heat stroke, not the frostbite.
yeah, yeah. Once it got down into the 60s there, and you caught a cold, and you didn't know if you were going to get over it. It was so chilly. You had to put on a light. Um,
That's only when we go up to the mountains, man, at least in Rio. If you're down here, you're wearing a jacket for style points, and you're gonna
yeah,
you're
just, you're just sweating out a jacket all day at your job. No, but like he's choosing, like he bursts in and is like, right, like, Marie's been dead for years. That whole thing. It's just like
yeah.
that is, and I don't know if it was Shelby Foot Appreciator. It was somebody on Twitter. Somebody, I should have saved that. Sorry to the, I don't know. I see so many tweets. Somebody pointed out that the way that that scene is shot is very church-like, in terms of that there's the wood waiting, the wood like
He looks like he
benches.
sat in a pew.
Well, they look like pews. So they're wood
Yep,
benches,
they're all
and
lined up.
it's shot a lot like it, like they look like pews. And then like the lighting too was the whoever this person
Oh,
was.
that's
Sorry,
interesting.
yeah.
I didn't
The
notice it.
lighting is very church. You know, um, there's no stained glass, but the way that the light is coming through the
Oh,
windows,
where the angles of
the
the
angles of
lights
the
where
light
they would
looks,
be and the
yeah,
level of lighting, because
yeah,
that also matters.
yeah, yeah. It's lit like a church.
And
Not
it probably has what I don't know if this is an actual term in cinematography, but it is in video games, God rays, which are these like beams of light where it's just
okay.
pure light and then everything around is like lit normally, but it's
Yeah,
made so like in video games they don't actually really have like there isn't like an actual light because the sun isn't a 3D object in most video games.
right,
But it's just like okay, it's supposed to look like it's coming from the sun, but then
right,
everything else around it is just like lit up like
right.
normally.
Yeah,
So the player has an idea of like being immersed there. They know where the lighting is coming from.
right.
So it has several God rays. Does it have God rays? I might need to
Well,
just open it up
it,
here.
I mean, I'm not a cinematographer. I'm not a movie.
But it's these little details that kind of
Yeah,
I think Hughes would have paid it. I
this was
think
done
these
on
little details
purpose.
make
This was
yeah,
done on
yeah.
purpose. So, if you've been in any church that's not like that's a little bit older style church, so it doesn't matter
Hmm.
whether it's, a Catholic or Protestant. There's like churches that have pews. So if you're Russian Orthodox, God bless you, but you just stand. I've stood through some of your services. God bless you. You
I need
stand.
to go again next time they
Yeah,
invite me because the after the first time I was like, really? I
you
was
just
like,
stand.
you really go?
Uh,
Like,
but you sit for 20 minutes during the homily, so that's fine, right? You're
oh
like
wow,
4 hours of
nice.
standing. Yeah. Uh, no. But like if you've been to a church that has pews, and that is of an older, more classic style, that's not hyper modernist. Um, there's the set, there's the Eastern orientation, and then there's like you get windows that are designed not necessarily to let you see outside, but are designed to let light into the church.
Yes.
And
Uh-huh.
so they're like opaque. Oftentimes they're opaque or whatever you call that, right? Whether they're stained glass or not, there's like an opaqueness to them. They're designed to let light in, but kind of filter light
Yeah,
around
you
the
can't see
space.
outside, and outside people can't really see in.
Right.
But the light comes in
Right.
nevertheless.
That is how, whatever that is called. Me and Bulge are talking around, and somebody's probably gonna be like,
Somewhat translucent, I
yeah,
think.
it's called. There's probably a term for it. That the scene in the L station inside at the very end, where Neil learns that Dell's wife's been dead for a while. That's all shot like a church. So it's all super churchy in a good, like, it's all very like a confessional moment, and it is a
Hmm.
confessional moment. It's like, right,
Yeah, it
because
is, because
yeah,
Dell has been deliberately hiding this.
I
Like,
mean, he hasn't
this
been
is one thing.
lying. He hasn't been lying, but
Dell
he hasn't.
has, but we have to notice Dell has lied in the movie in the scene where he's selling shower curtain rings. He's like, "This is a replica of like the Chinese whatever, which is
Yeah,
like 5,000 years old," and like
yeah.
he's selling to the underage girls some
You look
jewelry or
older.
whatever.
Yeah, you
You'll
look
look
so.
older, maybe even 18, maybe
Yeah,
even 19, and they just hand him
yeah,
the
yeah,
money.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I would call that so. I mean, we could moral ethic. We'd have to have a moral ethical discussion. I would call that bullshit, not
It
necessarily.
is.
I would call that bullshit, but in the Blues Brothers sense of bullshit. But yeah, regardless,
Maybe.
yeah, maybe it's more
I need.
bullshit.
We
But
need to
yeah,
rewatch. We need to watch that movie. We
well,
might have
we
discussed it
that's on the
before.
docket for you,
Yeah,
me, and Caleb. That's on the docket. Yeah, I need both of you all on that for that one. But yeah,
yeah. I need to rewatch it. It's a great
it's
movie.
that's like one of my best. That's one of the best movies ever made. But yeah, so the whole thing is also has John Candy in it, by the way.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah, we're in a truck. Yeah, yeah. But so it's a confessional scene, and then you have like the I will say Steve Martin is a shitlip, but he's a very good actor. Uh,
Many shitlibs are good
yeah,
actors.
he's a
It just
very
so
good actor.
happens that most American shitlibs nowadays aren't good actors. I
Yeah.
think a lot of British shitlibs are still excellent
Yes,
actors, for
I
example.
like Benedict Cumberbatch, regardless of.
He is a.
Yeah,
I don't think most of his movies are good script wise, but as an
he
actor,
can do it.
he
Yeah,
is actually very like. I think Sherlock is shit outside of like 2 or 3 episodes,
but
but
he owned it.
man, he's really good at it.
I
Like
mean,
him
yeah,
and what's is it? It's not Martin Short. It's
Martin
another
Freeman.
Martin Freeman. Yeah,
Martin
there are
Freeman.
so
Yeah,
many Martins. Martin Freeman, him and Martin Freeman
yeah,
knock it out of the park with their
yeah,
chemistry as
yeah,
Sherlock and Watson. It's
yeah,
I think that's the best part of that series. It's just their
yeah.
chemistry. But nevertheless, he is a
Steve
shitlib.
Martin.
But
Steve
in
Martin.
this movie,
Yeah.
his acting is excellent.
Well, and like the look of like I think he actually like he like lets air out of his like he like visibly lets air out
Yes,
because like
he visibly deflates.
deflates because it's such a depressing thing to hear. Like that, and I think it's. I mean, I think the way
And
I
you
read
could
it,
tell he suspected it. That's the
he
thing, because he's
suspected
holding
something
his
was
breath
wrong, but
where.
not quite. I don't think he suspected that bad though. That's the thing.
Yeah, no,
I
yeah.
read it as Neil hears the story, feels bad just because of like the story and what has happened to Dell, but also feels bad because he realizes that he has never really let Dell feel like Dell could share that. And he
Yes, that's
actually had
true
to
as
like
well. I hadn't thought of
force
that.
he had to force kind of almost force a confession out of Dell by coming back in such a dramatic way.
Yes.
But like
Uh-huh.
and like Dell like just and, like he feels bad like he had to force it, but then he feels like I probably should have allowed this to happen sooner. So like the fact that Neil has to come back and sort of quote unquote force the confession is really more of Neil making up for his mistakes of not having ever allowed for that to happen. And so it just I feel like you just like it just like I don't know. I think that Steve Martin is a great actor despite being a shitlib.
Hmm.
And can do serious and less and more comedic roles, and he kind of does both, right? As we've been saying, his acting is
Hmm.
kind of both throughout the film, because in many ways he's the quote unquote straight guy, right? To
Yes.
John Candy's over the top Del
Hmm.
Griffith character, because right, and that's not always the case, because in some cases Steve Martin is the over the top character.
Oh yeah, and
I'm
you can
thinking of
tell by this movie he can do over top because he has like 2 or 3 breakdowns, which are
yes,
some of the funniest scenes. I mean,
Chatty Cathy
just
doll, ah ah,
that
yeah,
there's
right.
that there is the part of the rental where he
Yes.
comes back, I want my fucking car right fucking now at this fucking spot.
Yeah.
And then he
That's
just very coldly says, "Can I see
you're
your
fucked.
rental agreement?
Yeah, you're
You're
rental.
fucked."
Yeah, I know. Oh, no, no. What? You're fucked. Yeah, I mean, when I think of all the ways you can use the word fuck in the English language, I always point people to like that scene. Like, look at all the ways that he's actually using the word fuck in that scene. It's actually quite linguistically interesting. You can put it in all sorts of different places in our
Uh-huh.
English. English is interesting with this. The way we
It's
swear is
a
very
crazy
flexible.
language,
Yeah,
man.
you
I
can use
love it.
fuck in so many different ways. Yeah, and I love too that like this is still a John Hughes movie, but they say the word fuck so many times in that scene
That's
makes me
like a
very happy.
4 minute stretch where they say it like 40 times.
It's like
And it's
boom,
the only
boom.
time they say it. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it's
They never say
crazy.
it before or after.
It's almost like for like that 30-second scene or whatever it is, that 45-second scene, it's almost like it's like all of a sudden we're in Big Lebowski. Where you're like, "Oh, we're
Yeah, no,
saying this a lot."
that's
And then
where you
it's
take
and
the kids out of the room
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
the 5-year-olds,
Yeah,
or else
yeah.
for the next week, or for the next week where you're with your in-laws, your in-laws come over, your parents come over, like and you have your 5 and 6-year-olds like fuck, fuck, fuck,
I
fuck.
might I
What does
might
it
be
mean, Daddy?
I might be wrong in this, so don't quote me on this, but I
Uh-huh.
think this is with this movie. I remember reading in some previous year like how they got away with saying fuck so many times. Like, because
Oh,
I'm
that
like
would be an
this
interesting story because
through
I
the
don't think it's
censors.
like rated what like
It's not.
it'd be
It's
rated
not.
way higher. I think it's PG-13 or
It's
something.
PG-13 and they say the F word
Yeah,
quite a bit. So what I
a
remember
lot.
what I believe happened, do not quote me. What I believe was the case that they made was something like, but we don't mean like it in a sexual way.
Which is true.
And that now that might have been for another movie or maybe it was this one, but like back in the 80s, you really had to like deal with like the censor thing was like, okay, like what are we gonna get? I mean, it's not censorship, but like the ratings people, right? They're like,
Hmm.
what are we gonna rate this? Because if we get an R rating, nobody's gonna go to this, right? It has to be PG-13,
Because
right?
it's a family movie, an
It's
R-rated movie.
still a
It's a
family
different
film.
audience, and
Yeah,
like after the first screening, like everyone just tell their friends if it's R-rated, like don't watch this shit. It's like
yeah,
for kids or
yeah.
whatever, like for
Yeah,
family.
so but like I just it blows me away. Like I'm like this scene, like when I watch it with my wife, I'm like, wait, it's the scene, it's the fuck scene. And I'm like, I hate my fucking new fucking car. It wasn't in the fucking spot. Yeah. Um, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I have been oftentimes I still am in the Neil freak out fuck phase where you're like everything's going wrong. Whether or not I'm really having a day that bad, usually I'm not, but in my mind it's like that because of my
Hmm.
plans have been squandered or whatever happened for the day. And it's just like, yeah, sometimes, man, you break down. It just happens. I try not to do it to other people. That's the thing. I try
Yeah, no,
really hard
you
to
have the
not.
little breakdown at the spot and just before you get into the airport,
Exactly. Yeah,
because the
yeah,
trip back wasn't exactly,
yeah. He gets
yellow brick road.
he has to walk
Uh,
across a runway. I had to walk three
Fall
miles across,
down
yeah, across frozen tundra and the runway to
runway.
get. Yeah, it's just, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
and it's, just before you enter the airport, you compose yourself and then you put your more dull Griffith face where, like, actually, I find it very easily because whenever I'm confronted with someone, I'm like, I'm actually very personable. I really like people most of the time.
yeah.
Even when they make me mad, it's hard to, like, make me dislike you, even if you make me mad. Uh,
You're a
so
better
it's easy
person
to
than
do
me.
that for me. I don't
Yeah.
think it's a better person. It's just instinctive. I don't think it's like I think it's an advantage. I don't think it's a morality thing.
You don't want to be
Uh,
eaten by
I still
the
hate you in
herd.
my heart, though. That's the thing. So I'm
Yeah,
not a
yeah,
better
right.
person.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, which is what matters, really. Uh, like, okay, I haven't ruined their day, but I've slightly killed my soul a little. Like, well, great
right.
trade-off.
Yeah,
Uh, so there's that. But I, it's such a great scene because like you could easily see yourself doing that. Like if you just lost control a little bit, because like the woman has done nothing wrong.
right.
Like all she's done is she's smiled in his presence. Really? That's
Yeah,
while he's having a really shit couple of days.
yeah.
That's literally his complaint, by the way. His complaint is don't fucking like what she asked, what can I do for you, sir? It's like you can wipe that fucking smile off your fucking face is
Yeah,
what you can do for me. And it's like you can tell like immediately. Everyone behind him in the line was like, he's not getting what he wants, is he?
Yeah.
It's like immediately, just in the spot, at the spot, in the
I've
spot, on
never,
the
I've
spot, on
never,
the spot.
I don't think I've ever blown up like that. I have had a really bad day once and I was mean to somebody. Well, I wasn't, I was
No, few
short-tempered with
people
somebody,
have, but everyone is
but,
tempted to every now and
but,
then.
but, I mean, not that it, I don't know. I actually did, once the situation was dealt with, I instantly apologized to the person and I explained why my day was bad. And it was because of a family death. And so, and they
Yeah.
were like, oh, okay. And I was like, I was like, it's still no excuse. I'm really sorry I did that. They're like, oh no, I kind of get it. Like they were kind of like, I figured you were having just like there was some serious thing going on. I was like, and I feel
Yeah.
really bad, but I was like, I don't actually hate you. It's just there's a family death happening. It
Yeah.
was thing, and it's just like it's
You
the
caught me at the wrong time. I'm
yeah, yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Which is
yeah,
really what happened to Neil. Neil isn't a bad guy. He doesn't go around hating people. He's
yeah,
just been having a couple of days he's really unprepared for and hasn't really, like, I don't know, taken time to regroup his forces. Really. He's kind
yeah,
of still on that perfect schedule of like, no, no,
yeah,
no, this has all been a fluke. I'm still getting there by 9 or
yeah,
something like that. If that's still his mindset, really, throughout the movie, it's not telling his wife, it's like, honey, it's rough out here.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
getting there when I'm getting there,
yeah, yeah,
which is what
yeah.
really. Which, by the way, I have a few behind the scenes. Or do you want to talk a little
Go,
bit
you go.
any
No,
plot
that's
points?
I
I have
basically have, yeah said my piece on it.
one really big plot point that they filmed and cut out in the editing room, and it was a big one. Not Dell, Neil's wife thinks he's cheating on her
Oh,
with a man, which is why, like, there's a scene in the hotel room where he's gonna dial the telephone and doesn't,
yeah,
just before he reconciles with Dell. He did dial her, and she didn't pick up in the original filming before the editing happened, in the post production, and she didn't pick up because they had earlier conversations where she accused him of cheating on her, with a woman. And they were like, that's like, we don't really have a good resolution for that. We'd have to extend the final scene. And
yeah,
the final scene is like Hughes in the post production was like, no, the final scene is like where it should end.
right,
We don't need this. And it was like a fairly major plot point to like all of Neil's like anger. It's like
oh,
my
okay, yeah,
wife thinks I'm cheating on her,
yeah,
and I'm just having the most like I'm not even having fun cheating.
yeah,
I'm not even cheating on my wife. I can't even say like, oh, at least I had fun or whatever. Like, no, I'm just completely miserable and I did nothing wrong. And now my wife, the woman I love most, is like accusing me of something I didn't do, and I've done nothing but suffer to try and get to her, which just adds like many layers to the shitness of his week,
yeah,
so to speak. And another thing which is funny, this is just a funny tidbit. This wasn't a major plot point. Do you remember just after the thief broke in, they have a Neil and Del have an argument because there was a the beer there was supposed to be beer on the vibrating bed that
yeah. That
exploded.
exploded.
But
Yeah,
did you notice that no one ever showed Del putting it down? Ever. You don't see those beer cans.
yeah.
The thief is the one who was supposed to put it down. Like he grabbed one like beer out of the pack and then put it down on the bed and then
Ah,
like I don't know, like stumbled on something, turned it on, and ran away after he pickpocketed them. And that's what's supposed to blow it up so that like, Neil is blaming Dell, and Dell, which is why that scene is ADR, by the way. You hear those lines as they're driving in the car because that wasn't in the original edit.
okay. Yeah, interesting.
Which is just a funny tidbit of like, yeah, maybe Dell actually isn't to blame. Maybe you're like, like Dell is not a shitty person, but he has a lot of unfavorable qualities, at least on the surface level, in terms of like odor and like you want to be quiet. You're a quiet guy. He's not quiet at all.
Yeah,
Maybe there's a mismatch there, but he's a little careless, as we see with the cigarette.
right.
That's certainly a character trait of his in the car, which leads to the best hijinks of the movies, as
Yes.
we've said several times.
Yeah,
But maybe sometimes you're putting more blame there because you kind of want to see it, than was really there, because that
yeah.
makes you feel better about the situation if you can blame even more stuff on him.
Well, it's mimetic. It's also it's like
Uh-huh.
I this guy is everything that's wrong is this guy. Yeah, it's like Neil,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
really right. Like you don't like, yeah, you're
yeah.
yeah, he's not maybe completely like he's not perfect. Dell isn't perfect, but I mean, he has that whole thing. I'm the genuine article. Like my wife likes me. My
I
custom,
like me. Yeah,
I
and you
like me. Yeah,
notice
yeah, like yeah,
if you're paying close attention, you notice how he stumbles over those words in the movie. He
yeah,
stumbles over "my wife likes me" and the "I like me"
yeah,
too, by the way, because he probably does actually have some trouble. He probably likes himself because his wife told him she likes
yeah,
him. He
yeah,
doesn't really stumble over "my wife likes me." He stumbles over the "I." There's a dot dot dot. I like me.
yeah.
Uh, and you can tell because he kind of is a lonely man. Despite he's a very friendly guy. People generally like him, but he's very lonely at the end of the day.
Well,
At the end of the day, he's the
in
guy who's
my
alone at a train
in my
station.
for what it's anecdotal and who knows,
Hmm.
I'm not going to pull out statistical psychological research on you, but I don't trust the experts anyhow on that, so whatever. I think anecdotally I will say that people who are the nicest tend to be oftentimes the loneliest,
Hmm.
in my experience, for whatever that's worth. And that your experience will vary or may vary, right? Like, but I think it's because in my experience, lonely people are know what it is to suffer, particularly during times when everyone else has somebody else to go to, right? Like they're and that I mean and that's a thing that like that Dell explicitly says, right? Like you're just trying to get home to your family. I just wanted to be, I just wanted to kind of, or maybe that actually, that was actually in the other deleted scene. Have you ever heard about that? There was a whole deleted scene that they took out wherein Dell actually like goes into the details of everything that happened with Marie. Um,
Oh, I did not. Okay.
yeah. So my friend, it pops around on Twitter every year during Thanksgiving. My
Hmm.
friend Wyatt tweeted it, so I will actually probably just put that tweet also in the description here so you can look at it. It's a whole like 3 page. I'm not going to read it. It's 3 pages of dialogue.
Hmm.
But it's like a whole scene that was removed. I don't know if they even shot it. I think it was just removed,
Yeah, it was just, yeah,
but
I
it
was just
actually
speaking of
goes
stuff they
into
shot in
like
filming.
there's this bit, but so like Dell actually says in this completely unshot thing that probably should have been in the movie, but it's fine. I'm not I'm not there to make the film. Uh
It's a very efficient movie of time. It's like
it's
one hour
very
and a
efficient.
half.
But
It's like
it's a
1 hour
bit,
and a half with credits. It's
yeah.
amazing.
Dell says like, every year I try to like find, particularly during the holidays, it gets really hard, so I try to find somewhere to be. And he's like, sometimes I try to find a church because it's hard to feel bad if you're at church. Like these are like lines that
Hmm.
that Hughes wrote, I think.
Hmm.
And that or whoever was doing the screenwriting, I don't know if it was Hughes, but I think he was involved in it.
I
Um,
believe so.
yeah, like and they just I guess it was just they wanted to make it tidy, but like Dell says, I try to find a church. It's hard to feel bad if you're at a church, but I guess I just didn't make it to a church in time this year. So I found you, but I feel really bad because I'm like
I thought, yeah, it's
I'm
such a great
I
line,
found
man.
you and I feel bad because I've made it so you can't get home and I've made it so like you're like I've cost you all this money and like I've just everything's gone wrong. And in the scene that was this cut scene, then Neil starts to like actually like what does it say? Neil visibly tears up, I think is what it says in the script. So like I mean, so I think that even though that scene wasn't shot, that I think is we'll say is canon. It explains Dell's like backstory more, and it's actually way sadder than what they let you. Like he like just marries Marie, and then she just like gets cancer and dies, and then
Hmm.
he's like, well, now I won't have. He's like, I'm 39 years old and I won't have any kids and I have nowhere to be. And I couldn't even keep the house because it just reminded me of her. So I just like travel around the country doing this work. And it's just like, damn. But like, anyhow, like people like that, and that's, I mean, maybe a uniquely rough case, but those cases do
Hmm.
happen. But even in
Oh,
like,
they do.
even of a more mundane or everyday loneliness, in my experience, lonely people actually, they goes one of two ways. They're either like insufferable because they're just like grasping it and they'll take everything from you and leave you with nothing because they're just like vampires and they just need
Yeah,
anything.
they're lonely for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's
Or it's people who are just like kind of chronic or because of life stuff and or chronic depressive stuff, they're just like that. And those people though, in my experience, tend to be the most caring because they understand what it is to not feel good. And
hmm
they probably they feel at least they feel like they can't fix their problems, but if they could at least make somebody else feel better, then they like their like their loneliness means something, I guess, right? Like it gives meaning to their in my
Hmm.
experience. I think that regardless, that's just me, but I think Dell's character fits into that archetype that I've just created. But
Hmm.
I think it fit like the lonely person who is still lonely, but doesn't, but actually wants to help people. The problem is that he don't like. There's that bit where he's talking to Marie, whatever it is, he's talking to the Marie while he's in the car, freezing. Right after,
Yeah.
yeah, he's like, look at that, I've done it. Well, Marie, I've done it again.
And
Right, like,
again,
yeah, like I
yeah.
smothered him. I didn't. I overwent. I went too much. I did too much. I did too.
I'm the biggest pain in the butt that ever walked down the whatever road
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah. Came down the pike or whatever it is. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
came down the pike.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but so I think I guess maybe if we can maybe start taking not a hard right turn, but a soft right turn home. I think I mean they are both kind of archetypal characters. I think in a
Hmm.
way. I think we've established that Neil, is the overly planned, and Dell is the overly chaotic. I think that both of them kind of have these interesting arcs that are sort of inverse, but meet in the. I mean, they meet at the end, right? They meet
Yes.
literally at the end, which is really cool.
I mean, it's also like just visually, they're both carrying the trunk, and they're
Yeah,
not maladjusted carrying it, where you could see when in the beginning, Dell asks him to help him carry it out of the airport to get to the
yeah,
first motel. He's like, "Oh my God, really?" And like we're stumbling, and they're not really going along. And I was like, "Yeah, try lugging this thing by yourself in New York." Uh,
yeah,
and at the end, like it's fine. It's like no, we're just sharing the load together. It's like
yeah.
no. We're synchronized now.
Yeah, and I think that yeah, again, in the spirit of bearing burdens, and thank you again to Shelby Foot Appreciator for the wonderful
And they're
tweet.
both bearing a burden together too, which is
Together.
important
Well,
too,
bearing each other's burdens,
visually.
bearing each other's burdens doesn't mean that like it means that people help each like in the truest sense of reciprocality. I mean, and you're not ever going to be able to do it perfectly, right?
Yeah.
My problem is I'm a Neil. I'm way more of a Neil than a Dell, and so I'm like, well, if I just do enough for them, then they'll do enough for me, and then it'll be fine. It's like it's like you're just planning it now. Like that's not bearing people's burdens might be planning, but it also might be like this person had something completely unexpected happen, and you are literally there. And like, if not you, who? Like, who is going to do
Hmm.
it? It's literally you. And what are you going to walk away? Like, who else is going to do it? Right? I've had moments like that where
Hmm.
it's like, this has literally got to be. It has to be me because I don't like even just maybe not even like on a bigger supernatural level, it has to be me. Maybe like just logistically, who else is going to be the one to do this? Like it literally has to be you, and you don't want to do it, but you just do it. But it could also be bearing again, like I say, bearing each other's burdens can also be like being honest enough to be like, I literally can't do this on my own, and like I am desperate. Would you please help me? Uh, and maybe not doing it in a Del Griffith way, but maybe not so chaotically, but like being willing to ask people for help too. I think that it goes both ways, right? And like
Hmm.
I think we can tend more to the one archetype or the other. I'm definitely more of a Neil, but I don't know. Like, I think that, because again, Neil has a hard time learning to help, but Dell also kind of has a hard time asking for help because he never really asks.
Yes.
He just
No,
sort of
ever.
is just there, like implying that he wants help, but won't do it, won't ask for it.
Hmm.
And it literally takes Neil, like I said, he has to force him to basically
Yeah,
ask for
basically.
help.
He has
Yeah,
to
right.
surprise Dell in a vulnerable moment when he believes he's all alone
Yeah,
to actually get Dell to confess, or
right.
else he's never getting it. Because
Yeah,
even when they were at the hotel room, complete motel, I suppose,
yeah.
completely relaxed with each other, just shooting the shit, drinking tequila and eating potato chips, and
Yes.
acting like they're in a summer camp,
Yeah.
as Neil pointed out. Uh, Dell doesn't say he has an opportunity to say it,
He doesn't
and
say
come
it.
and he thinks about it before he proposes a toast. Where it's like again 10 seconds of like silence, but they're not comedic this time for like very
No,
dramatic silence. And Neil's kind of drunk, so he doesn't really notice it at
he
the
doesn't
time. Only
notice it.
thinking
Yeah.
back at it, only when he thinks back on it in the train ride. But at that moment, you can tell it's like he decides not to. He decides, no, I'm not going to trouble Neil. smile and burn. I don't want to be
Yeah.
vulnerable. It's a very, very human thing to do.
People always say, again, a lot of this is cliche, but cliches, if something's cliche doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's something that humans deal with, and have dealt with and will continue to deal with as long as there's humans. There's an art to helping people, not a science, but an art. There's an art or a grace in helping people and helping people correctly, which is difficult to figure out. Oftentimes, to know how to help somebody, like to really help them is hard, right? Particularly if they don't know what they need. Uh,
Hmm.
but there's also an art, not a science, but an art to asking for help that I don't know. I think as modern people, I don't know. I feel like we have a hard time asking for help sometimes because we also have a hard time giving help. We have a hard
Hmm.
time helping people, but then we also have a hard time asking for help. And so I mean, in reality, probably we're both, right? We're both Neil and Del, maybe to different amounts at different points in our lives, but they're very archetypal characters. And now I really should be talking like Jordan Peterson. The archetypes are there. Archetypes traveling across the frozen wasteland.
No,
They
they're
gotta
both
get
people
home
who
to get the gold. They gotta get the
they're
gold home. Yeah.
they're
Anyhow.
both people who have trouble being vulnerable, which is
Yeah,
a very, I don't know if it's a very modern thing. Maybe it's just a very human thing, but I wouldn't know
I
what it
think
was like a
so.
hundred, 1,000 years ago.
It's hard to
Uh,
know. Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to know. Or maybe they would have trouble being vulnerable in different
It would be
ways.
different. I think it
Yeah.
would be
I
different.
think it would be radically different so much that at prima facie, like first encounter, we wouldn't recognize it as
Yeah.
lack of vulnerability because
Yeah.
they're like, they're crying on each other's shoulders, they're kissing on each other's cheeks, but which is we still
Yeah.
do in Brazil, but they're not, but they're not opening up about this specific thing, which is like, why would I ever talk to anyone about this thing? Whilst we would.
Right.
Uh, we have other things that
Yeah.
we are worried and vulnerable about. Actually,
Things don't get better or worse, they just get different. I
there's
mean,
a very
yeah.
modern song that kind of encapsulates the sentiment of rejection of vulnerability, which is good. You shouldn't like be vulnerable to the guy you just met on the plane, by the way. But if you're sharing a motel room by the second time
Yeah.
in like 4 days and you've been together for pretty much 72 hours, maybe oh no, the craziest trip of your life. Maybe it's time
Yeah.
to share a few secrets. But because again, politeness is important. Neil is not wrong about
Yeah.
that idea in how he acts. But there's a one of my favorite songs, at least by the times I've listened to it, is "Vampire of Time and Memory" by Queens of the Stone Age. And there's one verse of it that goes, "To be vulnerable is needed most of all if you truly want to fall apart," which is a very modern sentiment.
Yeah.
This idea is like, no, not doing that. Nope.
Well, I don't
Uh,
have time in my busy schedule to fall apart right now.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. But you'll never have time in your busy schedule to fall apart right
Yeah,
now. Right?
exactly.
Like that's the thing is you're never
There
gonna
will
have.
never be the perfect time to
Yeah.
fall apart. Now,
Well,
exactly.
because there's never a perfect time to do anything. I think that's also
Yeah, no,
this
there
is
isn't.
the real message of this of the movie in a way, and that's a way for us to maybe tie it up in a bow.
Yep.
Is there's ne I mean, and I really thank you all, anyone who's still listening, thank you. But also thank you for putting up with it because this is really just me talking. I mean, I'm just talking to myself. Like I have to remind myself, like at least once a week, maybe sometimes some weeks once a day that week. There
Mm-hmm.
is never a perfect situation in which you can do this thing. C.S. Lewis has that. It's C.S. Lewis, at least in the Anglican Church, we remember C.S. Lewis today, because it's
You
his.
guys really need a petition to canonize that guy. I'm like being
Well,
serious, at
effective.
least
So
for his
here's the thing.
writings.
Aside, he effectively is because canonization works for us more like it does for the Orthodox.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
more from the bottom, from the ground up, as from top down. And I'm
I
not
mean, that's how it starts here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But we don't have the same requirement for miracle or
There
whatever.
isn't like an
It's
official
not.
thing which the
Yeah, it's
church needs
not.
to
Yeah,
approve.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, okay. Got it,
Yeah,
got
and so I've talked to some Orthodox friends, and they've said no, like they've explained how it more or less how from a lay person's perspective how it works for them. Like, yeah, that feels very sim. I'm not
it.
the same.
Yeah.
It's very similar to kind
He
of
is
an.
already lay venerated,
He's
let's
already
say.
lay venerated, and he actually was one of. I mean, he. It's not like we will. My stance. It's a joke, but it's true. Roughly speaking, the Anglican stance is all your saints are belong to us. Like if one
Mm-hmm.
of another established Christian tradition accepts a person as a saint, we will also accept them as a saint. Maybe they might not be like a primary figure because if they're like, what is it, Saint Olga of Alaska or whatever, is like, oh yeah, she's great, but she was Orthodox in Alaska, so like we don't have a strong, we would accept her as a saint. I had this conversation with
Hmm.
with an Orthodox friend, and she's like, really? I was like, yeah, we would accept her as a saint, but we probably would not be including her in a homily or something like that, just because it's like not directly part of our tradition, but we would still accept her.
Maybe if there was an ACNA in Alaska with like strong ties to the community, to
Maybe,
like or an
right?
Orthodox
Yeah,
community that converted or
it
whatever.
converted, right? Yeah, like, but
Yeah.
we would accept that, right? So the Anglican Church, we accept all Roman Catholic saints,
Hmm.
including the modern ones,
Yes, yes, I've heard, I've heard.
and then
I think
all,
Westminster has Saint Colby and I think Saint Edith Stein
yeah,
on the I don't
Colby,
list
I don't
architectural.
deny Colby was a holy person. I have some serious issues with his theology. But for us, it's not about
He's a
agreeing.
Scotist, not a
Yeah,
Thomist, by the
it's not about
way.
agreeing with the theology for us. It's about whether they were emblematic, whether they were Christ bearers into the
I
world.
need to
That's
actually read more Colby,
I'm
but
not an expert on
I
Colby, but
can't
he
I cannot
strikes me as a
comment.
strange person. Anyhow, which is fine. You can be strange. It's fine to be strange. I'm also strange. But Lewis actually was an That's the thing too. Is like then there's all of these saints that only really Anglicans are going to recognize,
Hmm.
because they're sort of,
Yes,
you would say, post
they're part
schism.
of the
The
exclusively
Yeah,
Anglican tradition.
exclusively Anglican. Lewis is one of those for sure.
Hmm.
He was not, he was not ordained, but it doesn't matter, like,
Yeah, of
because
course.
he undergoes this
Most
like
saints weren't.
he undergoes this intense conversion experience, and then all of the huge output that he of
Oh
writing.
yeah,
So,
and the
um,
huge effect of it.
a
It's
huge effect of it.
I mean,
So
I remember Dr. Peter Kreeft, who's a Roman Catholic philosopher, has a joke that God made sure Lewis wouldn't become Catholic so the Protestants could feel safe reading him, because like there is no better way, or atheists even would like there is no better way to like become Christian, even as like an atheist. Like at least this guy was an atheist for like 10 or 15 years. Like he must at least understand the atheist perspective. I'll read him. Like
yeah,
he'll get it, and he will argue that way too. And like,
yeah,
what's his Christianity book? Mere Christianity.
pure
Like
Christianity. Yeah,
I heard the audiobook while I was out for jogging, and it's like actually really good, and it's
yeah,
worth. You might be the guy who's read all the scholastic writers. You read all the patristics. It's worth reading still then.
yeah.
Or at least worth
Well,
listening to, because it will just remind you of stuff you already know, but it's worth being
well,
reminded of, especially in such a beautiful way.
and on this channel we've done, and we just did actually last earlier this month. Me and my very very English colleague Fred did a whole episode on Screw Tape Proposes a Toast and
Which,
democracy.
yeah,
So
you told me
yeah,
about that. It's
so
awesome.
we've but it's when we're recording this, it's the 29th. So it's
Hmm.
C.S. Lewis. We remember him. It's his birthday. He
It
has,
is?
yeah,
Oh, I
it's
was
his
not
birthday.
aware
That's
at
why
all,
it's today.
actually.
That's why it's today. Yeah, it's his birthday.
Okay.
Yeah, so he has this quote, and I'll butcher it, and I'm not even going to bring it up because we're probably at time here, but I don't want to people
Yeah.
very kind and listening to us rant. But he has this quote talking about, somebody asked him, why would you continue to do academic research when we're fighting the Nazis? And his response is something like, because if you use excuses to not do important things, oh, the situation isn't right. Oh, I couldn't possibly. Well, but you probably could. But you're using an excuse to not do the thing that you should be doing, right? You're never, because there's no perfect time to do anything. Obviously, when London is getting bombed, it's a very less than perfect time. It's a very bad time to be doing anything that's not, putting out fires and running back into shelter, and running out fires and putting back into shelter, right? Because the civilian brigades they had working and doing all this stuff to keep, the city from completely burning down.
Hmm.
Uh, but like but he uses that as he's like, we're dialing this up to 11, but the point holds. There's never really a perfect time to do anything. And I have been falling into a massive rut lately with academic research, and I've literally had to force myself, like white knuckle it back in. And I've thought of that quote recently from Lewis about, like, I mean, he's fucking writing during the Blitz. Like I
This is
have
a sermon
I have
preached during the
I
Blitz.
have no
Learning
excuse.
in wartime, I
Yeah, I
believe it
have
was
no
called.
excuse. I have no excuse. Right? What, my life's a little chaotic. Like, okay, bombs are not dropping outside my house. They are in some places. So, I think that's anyhow, to tie it all back together, like the
Yeah.
Entertainer Lewis, like that's also kind of I think one of whether it's the explicit purpose of the movie, I don't know, but it kind of doesn't matter. That's a message that I definitely get from
Hmm.
the film, is like, Just do there's no perfect time. There's never a perfect time. Just do the next little good thing that you can do. And even if that's just putting up with somebody who's absolutely driving you crazy.
Yeah,
So,
what can you do right now? Like you are not like if you're not at the war front, you're
yeah.
at the home front. What can you actually do for your neighbor? Or maybe you're stuck living with your mother who is kind of annoying. Your dad is dead and she's kind of depressed about it and want him to be depressed. Whatever. Like if you read Screw Tape Letters, you know of the
Yeah.
protagonist's issues with
Yeah.
his mother. It's like, what are the 1,000 minor annoyances of everyday life? Like, what can you do to at least not make it worse?
The thousand natural shocks, as Hannah
Shocks that
would say.
Flesh is
Yeah,
there too.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. But no, I mean, and sometimes what do I do? It doesn't have to be. Sometimes it can literally be like, can you suffer for somebody who's not yourself or something
hmm
that's not yourself? Can you just endure it? And sometimes that is something. And that's definitely what Neil had to deal with, right? In his journey back home is a lot of
hmm
it is there's other things he has to do, but it's just he has to endure it. He has to deal with it. He has to suffer. But he doesn't view it, I think, in the beginning this way, but he comes at the end to definitely view, in my estimation, in my interpretation of it, he realizes that all of the suffering that he did dealing with Dell was actually helping Dell the whole time. And it
Yes.
meant a lot to Dell. And so it's like you can never really know the impact you'll have. And sometimes you won't even see that you did a positive. Sometimes you just suffer and you're like, I hope this means something. Um, and you
And
maybe
you
we'll
won't see
never
it.
know.
hmm
But are you suffering for something that's bigger than yourself, right? Like that's oftentimes what being, at least if not a good person, a better person is. Maybe that's a way to get us lawful neutral people into lawful good categories. Like,
hmm
got all this lawful structure. Okay, now start
Yeah,
like
time to apply it. Yeah.
apply it to, yeah. Anywho, we've talked for a long while, so
Yes.
thank you for coming on. And I know you're running on low sleep, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. I know you're dealing with a sweltering heat wave down there in sunny Rio. So thank you for
Sunny indeed.
sunny indeed. Anything you want to do? Quick shout outs before we wrap it for the night, or
I am writing a short story for Thomas Reviews at the moment. If you, is it even called Thomas Reviews at this point? I forget. Caleb like renames it like every three
he
months or
renames
something.
everything. Yeah,
I don't know, man. I think
yeah,
it's called Thomas Reviews. We haven't
yeah,
talked about St. Thomas in like 6 months or whatever.
yeah. Cool.
Or at least maybe I think maybe one of our other writers has. Anyway, I'm trying to do the finishing touches on that. Hopefully, it'll be out within a week. If it's not, I'm still writing it. So, but hopefully, it'll be out within a week.
Cool.
So check that out. Other than that, we have a few other articles from some of our guys at Thomas Reviews. Uh, Hopefully, me and Ein, who's one of our co-hosts slash co-writers at Thomas Reviews, are going to do another chapter of Mahitan's book, Degrees of Knowledge, book on epistemology, but very beautiful writing on the mystical path to God, on how the mystics know God, and just evaluating their experience and talking about it. And Mahitan is a French writer of beautiful prose that translates surprisingly well to English. I've read
Cool.
a little bit of a French and a little bit of the Portuguese translation. It's kind of shocking how well the language adapts. So hopefully we can schedule, because we've both had family conflicts whenever we try to schedule, but hopefully we can schedule it for at least finishing a chapter this month. But aside from that, not much going on here. You can find me at available username on Twitter, though I don't post that much there. But still,
Yeah.
every now and then I do.
Well, your country has a bad relationship with Twitter, so who knows how much longer you'll be allowed to do anything.
I can always get a VPN. They're not gonna
That's
find. They're
true.
not gonna find me.
They'll
I
never
say, and they
they'll
find
never
me
take me
4 months from
alive.
now.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, well, hey, I know you're busy and I know it's Christmas time or Advent tide, as we would say, us stodgy Anglos. But I mean, you and I have some stuff we could probably tease a little bit. We
Oh
we
yes.
we
Oh
have some
yes.
stuff. So definitely Nightmare Before Christmas, I think is a
Yes.
yeah. The great Owen Cyclops, who just dropped his new book, by the way, had a great tweet about this
Is
right
it
before.
Rover at the church or
No, Wagnition.
Oh, I need to check that out then.
Yeah, I just ordered the copies for me.
I
I
need to get
and a
it.
friend. Yeah. So he had a great tweet before Halloween all about Jack Skellington as kind of the pre-converted, the pre-Christian, the pre-convert. You
Mm-hmm.
how once and then what happens when you convert to Christianity as an adult? Because Owen's also an adult convert like me, and not cradle anything. And so you have how your appreciation of Christmas really changes, but also remains the same at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be fun. Also, I love Nightmare Before Christmas. Who doesn't love that movie? It's a great film. And yeah, I think definitely that one. I would also, I don't know. I'll throw some ideas out here. We could do the planning
Please
session
go
after,
ahead.
but I contend Die Hard is a great Christmas movie.
I'm gonna need to rewatch that
I
to
contend we
dispute
that
or
would be fun.
affirm.
Die Hard. Also, I would like to get you and Caleb a little bit more seriously than Die Hard. I would like to get you and Caleb on here for It's a Wonderful Life. Uh, Frank
Have not
Frank
watched that
Capra's
movie, by the
It's a
way,
Wonderful Life, and
so
neither
I
has
need to
he. I
watch
think,
it.
yeah, and neither has he. So we need to. Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life is a very good movie. So and
Even David Lynch loves it, by the way. He thinks
I
it's one of the
really
best
love
movies ever
that
made.
film. It's got
He
so much coffee and donuts. Yeah.
actually loves that movie, by the way, and
Yeah.
loves Capra. It's really cute him
Yeah.
talking about
I
it.
love Lynch too. Um, just to tantalize some people with some other things heading into Adventtide here. So Fred, or my very English colleague Fred, should be back on shortly, sometime before Christmas. We're gonna do a whole episode on Dickens's story, Christmas Carol. So
I
we'll
love
have the
Dickens, man.
Anglo-maxing quite strong there. We'll probably be looking. I think the angle we're going to take on it is looking at the story as it's a pre-Marxist, but also it functions as an anti-Marxist approach to charity. And how the answer to Marx is something like Dickens. This is a theory that me and Fred have been working on. So we'll put that out there. We'll see if people like that. It'll be a fun episode
I
regardless.
remember reading something about how much Marxists hate Dickens and
Yes,
sort of
that's
put him
part of it.
down as bourgeois
Yeah,
morality. I
yeah,
remember reading several things that
yes.
actually
The
mentioned
Marxists
this,
really
so
hate
that
him.
would be
So
interesting.
we are going to do a complete. We're going to
Which
be
is funny because,
yeah.
prima facie, if I'm like reading, I've read a few like introductory, like very small, like very slim volumes to like Marx's economic theory. I would think, at least prima facie, without reading Das Kapital Volume 1, 2, and 3, it's like, oh, it's like, you feel Dickens is a friend. Like at least like in
No,
some
they hate him.
on intuition, on some like level of intuition, you're like, oh,
Marxists hate him.
he's like mistaken, he's misguided, but he's
No,
the guy who's
they want
no, they hate him. They
they
want
hate
him
him.
dead. They
Yeah,
want
they
him
want him.
gone.
They want him double dead. So we're
Yeah.
Dickens respecters, me and Fred. So we're gonna do like a whole we're gonna
Hell
be
yeah.
dicks to the Marxists and yeah yeah remember everyone that Marxists would have thrown Tiny Tim into the coal mines. So
Oh
that's
yeah, very
yeah
true.
yeah they would have trampled him down literally. So there's some fun stuff coming down the pike. To borrow
Uh-huh.
a term from Del Griffith. Bulge, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you to everyone
Great
who's
pleasure to
listened
be
this
here.
far. Please have a good Advent season. We're heading into it. It's not Christmas yet, but you are allowed to put up Christmas decorations and listen to music. This is my stance. But it's not Christmas yet, but you should be expecting it eagerly. Um,
Yes.
cool. All right,
Mary is
everyone.
pregnant. The birth is not here yet, but
Not
expected.
here yet, but it is eagerly expected. All right, well said. Yeah, until next time, everyone, take it easy. Peace.